a mentor for many, and also he has written a new book called The Four Questions. And tonight he'll be speaking about them tonight, this book tonight, The Four Questions, and the main four questions in life. So this book is available for purchase afterwards. So without further ado, let's give a big round of applause to Vaisesika.
It's a beautiful environment, and it's really a pleasure to be here. My wife, Nirakula Devi, who's the videographer, front row. We're here from California on our way over to Europe. We have several engagements over there. And tonight I'm going to give a few of the ideas from the book, which is really a jumping off place for many more conversations. A word about books in general is that I had received a magazine that was published by my 2B spiritual master, and because I read it, I was an avid seeker at the time, and after reading the magazine, it was so well organized, and the thought process resonated with me very deeply. That took me to get more books at a local bookstore where we live in California. This was circa 1972. And I got the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and another book called On the Way to Krishna, and the Sri Ishopanishad. These are three of my spiritual master's books, and I read all of those, and then had the good fortune to not be too far from a center like this, where I had gone and found the lifestyle appealing, to say the least. So I enrolled, if that's what you want to call it, and found a very happy life living in an ashram. At the age of 29, I married my wife Nirakula, and we have had a couple of businesses. We were entrepreneurial after we got married, and we live in California. We're retired from any business activities now, and mostly just travel. And we do have a local center that we congregate at in ISKCON of Silicon Valley, which is endless fun for us. We love the devotees there. We've been there since 1999. Time flies when you're having fun. And this book is a product of me thinking about how to put in a book form the kinds of ways in which I have been speaking to many audiences in Silicon Valley, mostly in corporates, and trying to present it in such a way that there's easy entry into the practice of bhakti and something practical. A friend of mine who's a scholar and a child prodigy at that had told me once that any philosophy that doesn't have easy enough access for people is useless. That is, it may sound interesting, or it may even be intellectually challenging, but if there's not a way to enter into it and actually get results yourself and practice in such a way that your feelings fulfilled, then the philosophy is not so useful. So in that spirit, which was really the spirit of my teacher, who recommended that every generation, especially he talked to those of us who were directly enrolled as his students, he said, please write. Because it's important, every generation has their language, and there are different contexts as time moves on. And therefore he said, take the same teachings that I'm giving you, but put them in ways in which they may be usable by people in your time. So this is an attempt to do that. The four questions are predicated on a principle that comes in the ancient literature called the Vedanta Sutra, which is a summary of the most important points that are in the vast body of literature known as the Veda, which just means knowledge. There are many departments of knowledge there, and that includes the knowledge of self-realization. And the first piece of advice that that book gives in Sanskrit is like this: Atato Brahma Jignasa. And that means that now is your time to inquire. And so specifically speaking to us humans, because according to the Vedas, when we achieve a human body, and it happens by way of winning the lottery, so to speak, it's not something you can sign up for. It's awarded after apparently a long time, and it's a great opportunity. And therefore, the phrase, Atata Brahman Jignasa, is accounting for this fact, and the first word is therefore, and it means, therefore, because you now have the opportunity to inquire, ask about something that's really important. Ask the biggest kind of question you can ask. Now that also, when I first heard it, resonated with me, because when I was a child, I was unusually inquisitive about what my parents thought were odd things. For instance, why do I have to die? They thought I could just put that off because, after all, it was a long time in the future, they said, when I was a kid, that you're going to die. And I thought, although I didn't really talk back that much, I said to myself, how do you know how long I have to live? And besides, it doesn't matter to me whether it's a long time in the future. If it's going to happen at some time, I definitely want to know what it is. And that inquiry, that spirit of inquiry stayed with me throughout my adolescence. That's how I ended up living in an ashram, because I really did want to know. And I found serendipitously that by asking questions, there's a way in which the answers started coming to me. That also led me to think about how in the Bhagavad Gita, which is really my favorite book, it's a book that I received in high school, and it changed my life reading it, that there is an intelligence, I would say a benevolent intelligence that's all-pervasive, and including in our own hearts. And if we tune our questions and ask earnestly, there's a way in which the answers will be forthcoming. Therefore, Atato Brahma Jignasa, this first admonition, which is ask. Ask the big question. Ask where you came from. Ask what's the source of everything. Ask what's the purpose of life. And in that spirit, I fashioned this book, The Four Questions, and the subtitle is A Pathway to Inner Peace. Just a word about that, and that is that inner peace is at hand. We don't need anything extra. In the book I received that I mentioned, one of the first 3 books I got from my spiritual master, before he was my spiritual master, one of them talks about how we're already complete. But our sense of incompleteness is due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. When I read that sentence, it gave me solace to begin with, because there's always a feeling that we have to attain something more to feel whole. I might have a 2-year college degree, but then that's not enough. I have to get a 4-year and a master's degree, and then a PhD. And then when it comes to money, it never seems to be enough. If you get somebody gives you $1 million as a gift, you might then think, how cheap. The guy's a billionaire. Besides, that's already spent on before it hits my hand. And there's never a full sense of completeness in my interaction with the world, or my endeavors to fill myself up by ordinary means. But the ancient Veda says, if you can realize who you really are, then you don't have to become something else. It's not in becoming something else that you become happy, because when you realize what your nature is and that you're part of something much bigger, then you'll naturally feel happy. And the intention of the 4 questions is to uncover what our nature is. And a word about questions in general. In my estimation, and I'm open for debate, vigorous debate on this, the most powerful punctuation mark in any language is the question mark. Semicolon, not even close. In fact, some writing teachers say, don't even go there. It just looks ragged on the page. Exclamation mark, maybe 1 in a whole book. Don't pepper the paper with exclamation marks. It's the sign of a true novice. But the question, sorry if I'm offending anybody. I have a friend who puts 1 on every sentence. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Anyway, it's not really about that. It's about symbology, that the question mark symbolizes something very powerful. But it does have a function. When you get an email with a question mark in it, you better answer. If there's no question mark, you say, well, what do you want? You're really just giving me information. And according to rhetoricians, whoever's asking questions in a conversation is leading the conversation somewhere. It's counterintuitive, because oftentimes one might think that if I'm telling and telling and telling, I'm really telling the person what's the way things are. And of course, a person convinced against his or her will is of the same opinion still. But if you ask questions, it leads to self-discovery. And of course, everyone in the world practically knows about the Socratic method. Socrates had a way of teaching his students how to ask questions to unearth the truth. And using such a metaphor, we might also think of the question mark as a tool. Doesn't it kind of look like a digging tool? That's why I like the unearth, which I just thought of. And then there's another way in which it may be used to open things, or it may be used to drag things as a hook closer to one. In fact, this is the idea behind the question. And the word itself, question, is interesting, because if you look at it in the OED or in any etymological dictionary, you'll find that the word comes from the word quest. Not a big surprise, right? But the way it describes it, the history of the word is a search for the Holy Grail. And a quest, when you ask a question, the implication is it takes you on a journey. Now, what kind of journey do you want to go on? And that comes to one of the sayings that I put in the book, which is, for me, of course, the whole book I wrote for myself just as a guide. And somebody accidentally published it, so I don't know how that happened. and that is that the quality of my questions determines the quality of my life. And this is something my spiritual master pointed out too. There are lots of living beings all ask questions in their own ways. And birds wake up in the morning and start asking, where's the worm? And not that that's cliche or anything, but there's a way in which we may ask superficial questions, and what will happen then? You get superficial answers. But if you ask huge questions, there may be a doubt that, is there really an answer? If I ask the question, why do I have to die? Is there really an answer? Is there a source of everything? Some might say that, well, that's not answerable. And some might say that you're entering into the realm of blind faith. But then we'll also reply that you may be entering into the realm of blind doubt, which is the other side of the coin. And if you claim that the ultimate source of everything is not knowable, then you're engaged in a logical fallacy because you must be the supreme yourself to be able to make such an absolute statement. So the book, in the book, I'm presenting the mood of the ancients, the sages who say, be open to the truth. Open your heart, open your mind, because the answers will be forthcoming if you're sincere, you really want to know, and you ask the questions. Miracles will happen, and you'll go on a journey. You'll start your quest by asking a question. The first question in the book, out of 4, is, what is my purpose? And an analogy that my teacher gave that I've always kept with me is one of the tiny screw. If you find a tiny screw lying about on Schermerhorn, you feel it underfoot and you pick it up, you might think, aha, I'm rich. I'm going to sell this on eBay and earn at least $5,000, right? No. I'm delusional? Absolutely delusional. We won't get a penny for it. However, if the screw is in the machine for which it was made and doing its job, it's inestimably valuable. It has a purpose to serve. So the concept of dharma, that which sustains us, that work and state of consciousness in which we feel perfectly aligned, that is the subject of these ancient wisdom literatures. And when we come to know our purpose, regardless of the external circumstances in our life, we'll feel satisfied. And therefore, it's worthwhile, say the Vedas, not just the Vedas, but all great thinkers. For instance, we hear, the unexamined life is not worth living. And many such calls for us to find out why we exist, what's our actual purpose, where are we going. And even in common sense dictates that if you don't know where you're going, of course this is also a line from a musical, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And so taking time to discover one's purpose, why we're doing things is very important. In the book, in this artwork, there is a team of 3 artists who worked and rendered these. I'm just showing a few of them tonight, but the book is full of them. And we had a lot of fun creating it. It's the creative process. We spent months going over the text and then comparing it to the artists' renderings of the ideas within the text. And this is a story about working without a sense of purpose, the cat in the basket. Do you like stories?
Yes.
Not that much, huh? Okay. All right. So the cat in the basket. Once there was a clergy person who was teaching his acolytes the ways of doing a wedding. And they were all writing down dutifully everything that the priest did. And when a cat found an opening that couldn't be fixed and kept coming in and playing with all the implements that were to be used in the wedding, then the priest, a cat lover himself, had pet the cat, had someone fetch a bowl of warm milk, plied the cat with milk, and then gently placed it in a basket. When it was sound asleep, he went on with his work. The students wrote that down. And 4 years later, when the priest was no longer with them, and it was now their duty to carry on the ceremonies, they worked together to put on their very first solo wedding. And they were just about to start when one of them exclaimed, wait, we can't start. We need a cat in the basket. So they looked around the village and they found partially willing cat. They brought it in. They plied it with warm milk. They petted it, and put it in the basket, and eventually it fell asleep, and they could start the wedding with great certainty that they were doing everything in the right way. And this way of accepting whatever rituals we're performing in life, especially in religious circles, there's a way in which people touch this or pull their ear or whatever it may be. I have a friend who's a bit of a cynic and sarcastic, and when traveling in India to many different temples, he would notice things going on, and I said, "What's that about?" He said, "Cat in the basket." So we may live our lives without asking why we're doing certain things. We just do them. But even more importantly, we may not ask what's the purpose of our lives. The next question is, how may I be of service? And this is an aligning question. That is the question, how may I be of service, puts us into a state of mind which is very natural for us to serve. The great teacher of bhakti 500 years ago named Chaitanya, when he met with a very qualified student named Sanatan, who knew 7 languages and was a very wealthy person, highly accomplished, that student asked his first question, "Who am I? And what is my duty in life?" Very simple, basic questions. And Chaitanya answered that you're an eternal servant of the Supreme. And this then becomes the basis of bhakti yoga. That when we are aligned in service, then we feel happy. What's more, we become insiders. It's counterintuitive because oftentimes I'll think that unless I'm the master of ceremonies, unless I'm leading everything, then I won't feel satisfied. I have to be the boss. But the Bhagavad Gita says, actually, you'll feel satisfied when you're engaged in some worthy service. It's the most rewarding and highly edifying of all kinds of activities. And I'll give you an example that is on a very basic level of how important being aligned in service is, and that is, if you go to a social gathering in which you feel awkward, has that ever happened to anybody?
Yes.
Can you think of a place where you felt awkward?
Yes.
Okay, I won't ask you what it is. But I do know that even people, when they go home for holidays, oftentimes say, "Oh, I don't know how this is going to work out." Human beings are complex. Families, perhaps especially complex. But let's just say let's just say one of you goes to a gathering you were invited to, and you get there and you feel awkward because you're not sure who to talk to, you don't know anybody, and you're not sure if you overdressed or you're underdressed for the occasion. You know the feeling? You get there, you're looking around, it's like, did I blow it? That's awkwardness. And then you see somebody there that looks like they're part of the program. And you walk over and you say, "Hey, how may I be of service?" They say, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked. You see those chairs over there? We're late. If you could just move them, 2 at a time over here and line them up, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you for asking." So then you start moving chairs. And now more people come in. And they immediately see you. They say, "Oh, this is an insider. This person works here." Not only do you feel immediately aligned, no more anxiety, you belong there now. You're on the inside. Everyone else will look and think, "Oh, this person really knows something. They're part of the help that's putting this thing on." That's a commonplace example. But according to Chaitanya and according to the ancient wisdom literatures, this very simple act of asking, "How may I be of service?" realigns us, because we may feel anxiety that I'm not being served enough. Have you ever felt like that from the phone company or electricity or the post office or the airlines? How come they forgot to bring my little drink of water or whatever it may be, not serving me enough? One of the ways to realign and come out of this sense of incompleteness is to ask how may I be of service. It seems improbable, but this is the teaching of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and anyone can try this at any time to find out the ways of entering into the inside of any situation. And the ancient Vedas say if you want to achieve enlightenment, you could do it by asking this question. And if you find somebody who's engaged in service to the Supreme, we call this bhakti yoga, and then you say, is there something I can do? May I be of service to you? They may give you even moving chairs, and then suddenly you'll be part of it all. And this is one of the ways, amazingly, such a simple process that one can enter into the inside and not be left on the outside looking in. And as far as the various paths in life that are described in various writings, and which I've summarized here, there's 3 major paths that we can take in life. And I want to just give a quick example of a number line, which has on this side, what do you have? We have any calculus students in here? No, you don't need that. You have the negative numbers. That's what I'm pointing to from this side. And then if I keep coming up the number line, I come to 0. And then what if I keep going? Okay, that's a 1600 on your SAT. The path you see on the bottom, enjoyment, is the path of the negative numbers. That's the negative side of the number line. What do I mean by that? There's a way in which you may spend on a credit card all over New York City for 2 days. And everyone say, wow, you're really rich. But when you get home to Des Moines, Iowa, there's still going to be a window letter in your inbox, in your mailbox that says, you owe us $10,000 for your 2 nights on the town. And this is called karma. When we work in the world for our own enjoyment, there's a way in which we rack up a bill. And actually, the bill gets so big that it's impossible to calculate. They have to keep all the receipts in extra storage lockers. And one accumulates life after life, this kind of karma. So the path of enjoyment, it may appear appealing for a moment or two, but then there's a huge price to pay. Then you have the path of renunciation. And that, in our example of number line, means getting out of the negative numbers and coming all the way to
0.
But 0 is 0 after all, isn't it? And this is one of the philosophical points, very profound point that the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, says. You won't be satisfied at 0. Yes, you may avoid the work that causes you debt and therefore having to work extra hard and suffer. But when you get to 0, you'll have to come back somewhere eventually because you can't stay there. We're not satisfied at 0. But then the Bhagavad Gita will suggest there's the third path, which is the path of service. And when you dedicate your activities, in fact, whatever you have, if you consider it paraphernalia to be used in service to the Supreme, say the Bhakti wisdom literatures, then your life will take on new purpose. You'll be the tiny screw that's connected. What's more, there's no debt, there's no reaction. And we might think of a bank teller. Bank teller counts millions of dollars, but doesn't touch it. It's not mine. I'm putting in the right drawer. I'm putting in the right account. Or as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the lotus flower, which is called in Sanskrit Padmaja. Padmaja means that which is born in the mud. It's born in the bottom of a pond, which is muddy. It grows up to the top of the pond, and it's constantly being splashed, but it is never wet. It is impervious to water. What's more, it shakes off the mud. And in a famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, I don't know how famous it is, but I hope to make it famous one day, because I'm making a logo out of this verse. It says, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya lipyatena sapapena padma patram ivambasa. It's got the word lotus in it. And Krishna's here saying, and this is my logo, don't steal it, live like a lotus. And he says, if you live in the world and your intention is service, you're not trying to keep it for yourself. You're the bank teller. You're using everything, all your things. You can have as much as you want. Just don't touch it for yourself. My parents used to tell us when we were on vacation, when you go in a store, don't touch anything. So if you break it, we have to buy it. And that's the rule in this world too. Don't touch anything unless you have the intention of using it in service. Amazingly, when you do touch things for service, you feel fully satisfied. And you're an insider, and everyone's happy with you. When you try to take them for yourselves, then you have to pay a huge price for it. Not only that, it becomes a burden. The path of service is the supreme path, and anyone can take it because it's our natural condition. It's a kind of consciousness that immediately uplifts us when we ask the question, how may I be of service? And we choose to walk this path of service. The third question is, everyone okay so far?
Yes.
Okay. 7 people are good. Question 3, what is the lesson? This is a little harder to ask sometimes because when we have a reversal of fortune, when we're suffering from some trauma, it really hurts, doesn't it? Everyone here can relate the fact that there are troubling, that's not a strong enough phrase, when there are disastrous occurrences in our lives and we feel put upon. We may even rage against the machine and say, I'm a victim and I'm suffering so much. Well, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the quintessential writing on the path of Bhakti Yoga, about Bhakti Yoga, says, in a famous verse, another one, Tattenu kampam susamikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam hridbhagvapur vir viranam namaste jivetaryo mukti pade sadaya bhak. And what this says in essence is, if you look at the entire universe as a cosmic schoolhouse, and you live your life day to day to learn the valuable lessons that are coming to you, and you're able to ask this question, what is the lesson in anything that happens to you, supposedly good or supposedly bad, whatever it may be? I ask, what am I to learn from this? How will this make me a better servant? How will it improve my way of looking at the world, the way of treating other people? After all, we find naturally that when people have gone through trauma themselves, they often become more compassionate towards others. Something else Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when he says that those who have a sense for how others are suffering and feel empathy for them are the best of all yogis, because they have compassion that has grown from learning their own lessons. The default to this is to become a victim and to blame everyone else. But these ancient wisdom literatures ask us to do something very courageous. Look at yourself and think that I'm more powerful than I think. And my activities, whatever I do, say, think, is more consequential than I know. And if I'm able to align myself with my own creative power, through which I'm creating my own environments and my own circumstances, which come back to me by the grace of the universe, which is teaching me valuable lessons and bringing me to the highest version of myself. Such a person becomes enlightened, so much so that they're no longer obliged to stay in the dark material world, says the Srimad Bhagavatam. Such persons are invited to live in the world of light, in the spiritual world, from adopting this question, what is the lesson? The painting on the left we worked on quite a bit. Your mate is your mirror. And the world is a mirror to our activities as well. But I think it's, for those who have a mate, it's more comprehensible because it's very immediate when you live with somebody. And then you may be annoyed with them, but then if you're really introspective, you may find that I'm annoyed with them because I have the same quality that I don't like in them. It's because I don't like it in myself. And then, of course, there are stories, this particular story in the Srimad Bhagavatam of an enlightened sage who lived in the wilderness and was met by a king named Yadu, who interviewed him and realized that he was enlightened. And he asked him, how did you become enlightened? He said, well, I have all my gurus here. And the king looked around and said, I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see anybody at all here. And then the sage began pointing to various entities, like the mountain, the tree, the Karari hawk who flew nearby, and he named 24 elements and entities in nature and circumstances that he had been witness to that brought him to a position of enlightenment. So in this way, the Bhagavatam teaches, if you're asking this question, what is the lesson, then you're able to take not only from your so-called teachers, but also from every circumstance and every form of nature is teaching us something. It's talking to us. In fact, the Bhagavatam says, when the sun rises in the morning and it's going overhead, it's speaking to us, but do we hear it? It's saying, I'm taking away one more of your days, and we only have a finite number. But do I hear it? Or do I put my visor down and say, I'm in a hurry, I have to go. Where are you going? Nobody really knows where they're going. The fourth question is, where am I investing my attention right now? And I deliberately use the word investing, and I like it as a parallel to the way we think about finance. When we ask, what's my return on investment? That's a good question to ask, right?
Yeah.
Say yes.
Yeah.
If not, see me afterwards. I have a few words of advice for you. We have ROI, return on investment, and we have, more importantly, ROA, which is return on attention. And why is that? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches, where attention goes, energy flows. For instance, he'll say, Yanti deva vrta devan pitran yanti pratir bhata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti mam yajino pimam, which is, wherever you point your attention, whomever you point your attention, you're going to go to that place, that person, you're going to become like that. Because where attention goes, we're so powerful. And our main asset, I'm going to go out on a limb here, catch me if I fall, our only real asset is our free will of where to place our attention at any given second. We have that power. Our attention is so powerful that wherever we point it, we're going to go there. Whatever we look at, we can become part of. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says, be careful where you're investing your attention. let me ask another question from the SAT. What is likely more beneficial? Scrolling on your phone or reading the Bhagavad Gita?
Reading.
Okay, 1,600 points for you. You passed your SAT. According to the Bhagavad Gita, if you know that, then you're... And what did you say?
Unless the Bhagavad Gita on the phone.
Now you're talking. And this is a wise statement, because when we fill in the gaps and make sure that we don't fall into them by leaving gaping holes around that we can stumble into, like the phone is a gaping hole that you can fall into. If you very deliberately make sure that you have something worthwhile to place your attention on when you open your phone, then you'll be able to use that for enlightenment. We don't eschew any item in this world when it's used in service. And that's the principle of how may it be of service. And how may you use everything in service. And of course, whatever we point our attention at, we're absorbing also. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dhyayato Vishyam Pumsam. Whatever you meditate on in this world will enter you and make a sangha. It will become part of you. You'll have to carry it with you. If you ever looked at something and then you walked away and you still were thinking about it, say yes. And if you ever listened to a song and you walked away and you were listening to it, still in your head, we absorb from the environment. So content and content are spelled the same way. Your content, what you take in, based on where you place your attention, will equal your level of contentment in life. That's another story, Ricky and his mice. You'll have to read the book. Therefore, there are ways in which one may practice honing one's intention, sharpening it, so that you can point it at something that's transcendental, which means it's beyond the realm of the material world that is gross, which pulls us down, which makes us feel heavy, and we can point it towards the world of light. We can point it towards Krishna. And the best way, according to Chaitanya, who taught about bhakti 500 years ago, the power is in the name of the Supreme. And if you practice mantra meditation by repeating the mantra and listening to it, and keep bringing your attention back to it, then you'll become enlightened. What's more, you'll feel happy, which is impossible to do anywhere in this world without an intervention. Thank you. We're over time, right? Who's running the show here? Me? All right, we'll be here all night. Do you have a... Yeah?
Until 8:25.
Okay, let's see if we have any reflections or questions. Yes.
So
Here you go, Paul.
we're talking about service as the how do I be of service, and that service. How do we know that we're rendering service in the right direction? Because oftentimes in the material world, service can be rendering service in the wrong direction, causing more harm to ourselves. So, in general, what's a general principle for knowing?
It's always the general principles. You get the best advice and information you can, and then make a decision. So it's always helpful to find experts, those who have achieved success in any discipline, and then get advice from them. And that's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Find somebody who's already turning, and when you can ask them how they achieved the position they achieved, and you ask submissively, then they'll give you the way. They give you the way forward. In your music, you're a musician, so likely went to somebody or you watched somebody and you said, how do you do that? And they told you. So this is one of the powers of asking questions. If you ask the right question in the right attitude to the right person, you can learn everything. And it's amazing being a human, isn't it?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes, it's amazing.
If you're human and you're happy, raise your hand. No, I'm just kidding. You are humans. We should be happy because we can really do whatever we want. We have the idea of being a human is you've been in a cage for a long time, and now the door's open. You can walk out if you want. You just have to have the means to do it. So one of the ways that Krishna talks about that is find the experts, find those who have developed themselves spiritually, if we're talking in that realm, and then make an inquiry, ask a question in the right mood. Why is that important? For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshina. If you go to a person with knowledge and you walk in and you say, hey, what's up? What's up, doc? Just what you got going on? Just tell me, something. They may not be so inclined because your mood might be abrasive. So Bhagavad Gita says, go in a humble mood, be humble and hungry. Render some service. Here's another power of service. When you render service to somebody, if you've ever had this happen, somebody does something for you without asking anything in return, you feel eternally indebted to that person. I think that's the reason that there's this cliche of kids bringing an apple to the teacher. Remember that? They still do that? It was on Leave It to Beaver back in the old days. And, you come into the classroom and you give an apple. So there's a way that, holy Yuda, are you calling me? Help yourself, you can read the daily email here.
Inside information.
Anyway, insider information. So there's a way in which if you ask in a humble mood to a master and you render some service, then all the knowledge in the universe is available to you. Nothing can stop you from taking it in. Thanks, nice question. Yes. 1, 2, come to you next.
For the first time in, third time in 20-something years, I found myself at my father's gravestone today, randomly. And I heard your voice say, the question leads the conversation. The 9-year-old child who asked the question, why did my daddy die at 42? Why am I 9 years old and have no father? The question led the conversation of my life that led me to your lotus feet.
That's, yeah.
If you have not read this book, read it. Buy a stack of them and give them to everyone that you know. Because where most of us pick up Bhagavad Gita for the first time and say, I don't understand anything I read, this book is so easily engaging that it will bring so many people to bhakti and to peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for doing this talk with us all.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. You said hone and sharpen your intention. What is intention?
It has the word ten in it, which is the same in its Latin word, and it also is in the word tendon. Tendon holds together the bone and the muscle. And in other words, not in other words as a transitional phrase, in other instances of words where the word ten is included, it means to stretch towards something. It's the literal meaning of it. That's why it's in tendon. It helps to, it stretches, it holds things together. And our intention is arguably the most important aspect of our life. Let's consider the legal system. What is it all about? When it comes down to the essence of the legal system is to determine, did you mean to do this? Or was it an accident? Or many nuances in between, because we will judge based on how much you intended to do it. For instance, if it was a crime. So our intention is our expression of our free will. We're not dead stones. We have the power to express our desire and reach towards whatever we wish in this world. A person who's untrained may reach towards the wrong things. They may ask the wrong questions, and therefore their lives are out of order, and they feel out of alignment. When we're able to stretch towards the right things and express ourselves that this is important to me, then we are exhibiting consciousness. It's the symptom of consciousness, to have intention, to have volition, to have free will. And that's the greatest show on earth. The soul is amazing, as we can create, we can desire, and also we can change our minds and so forth. So bhakti yoga really is in the realm of studying consciousness, the energy of consciousness. What is it? Where does it come from? How does it work? And intention is at its core. It's our expression of will, free will. Yes,
Thank you so much.
it's a pleasure.
We talked a lot about service and how we can chant the Maha Mantra. To you, how can we best be of service to the people we love or to others, strangers, people we work with?
How can we be the best? There's a phrase in the Bhagavad Gita that I love, and Krishna has said, one who is a kind friend to all living beings is very dear to me. And just think about that, if that was your main occupation in life, be a kind friend to all living beings. It's good work if you can get it, right?
Yeah.
And what does a friend do? A friend tries to give the best thing to others, to other friends, and so forth. Thinks in terms of that. And best gift that one can give others is a gift of knowledge. That's why my teacher liked books so much. He pointed out that books are beloved in human society, have been for centuries. Before we had paper, people figured out how to write stuff on other surfaces, on walls, on leaves, and whatever, rocks, whatever they could find, so they could share realizations and advice with other people. And then the Bhagavatam, for instance, a book that my spiritual master brought all the way from India, has a statement, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam avatyapi. And that is that this written word that's in this book is not from the material realm. It's from a higher realm, one that resonates with our hearts, but that we feel unacquainted with, until we enter into the literature itself, and then we feel connected, and we feel happy and satisfied. And he says, Viplava, it can revolutionize one's life and bring one out of the darkness. And therefore, my spiritual master used to say that the best gift you can give to others is books of knowledge. People are always looking for ways to improve their lives. And nowadays there are myriad ways in which people can glean information. One of the most confusing ways is on YouTube, because everyone has a slightly different idea about how to build your glutes or get abs. No. Not like that. You're going to kill yourself. You got to do it like this. So if you find an authoritative source of knowledge that's transcendental, and that's a whole nother subject of epistemology, how do you find the right source of knowledge and understand that it's beneficial for you and everybody else? But this is how to be a good friend to everyone, is to distribute books of knowledge, because they're like messages in a bottle. They go out to people. I became involved in this movement, which I'm so grateful for. I couldn't believe they let me in the door when I came as a kid. I was like, can I get in here? It's like, you'll have to get a note from your parents, kid. And they finally let me in. And I got that as a magazine, was given to me by my friend Richie Corsa, who's not involved in Bhakti Yoga so much, but he always says to me, well, he said to me at the time, I don't want this thing, but I paid my last, he was a kid too, I paid my last 25 cents, but I know you're into this kind of stuff, so here, you take it. And I really did take it, I took to it. And I could see that when you put transcendental book, something that has value for the soul, out into the world, it can go anywhere. It can go all over the world. And then anyone who opens it can read one word, one line, and then become changed. They can start on a new course in life. So this has been my path in life, is a dedication to the distribution of literature that's changed my life so much. It's practical, it's quantifiable, and people love books. And when they have transcendental literature, then they can transform themselves. We have time for one last question. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question about adversity. Sort of for myself, but also on behalf of some of my devotee friends. I mean, I heard about the story of Queen Kunti, but we are in no way on her platform of being pure devotional service. So how do we look at adversity, especially sometimes when it gets really heavy, so that we don't become bitter, lose faith, and then give up the process, but instead take shelter of our sadhana and our japa? Because I've talked to a lot of my friends, and some of them just kind of, lost faith and they just stopped the practice. And then, how do you encourage ourselves and our friends to actually take shelter of the japas? Because some of them, they don't want to talk to me anymore because they say I'm too heavy. But I feel like, when I'm trying to bring that up, I'm also preaching to myself because it's kind of hard.
Well, first, for context, for anybody who might not know exactly what you're talking about, there's a saint, and her name is Queen Kunti, and she had gone through a lot of adversity in her life, and she tolerated, and she developed very high consciousness even amidst the adversities in her life. And she even wrote a prayer that indicated that when life is the toughest, that's when I'm reaching the deepest and learning the most. And it's a hard thing to do when it's happening to us. And I did give that caveat when I mentioned asking the question was the lesson. In fact, it's a good idea not to impose it upon people when they're experiencing trauma. It's like, yeah, just ask this question, you'll be fine in 2 seconds. It doesn't work like that. It's a way of preparing one's consciousness to align with the idea that this life is not meant for comfort, it's meant for learning and improvement and coming to the highest version of ourselves. That the universe is actually doing us a favor. It's really hard to see because we're so tiny compared to the universe, and it's hard to have that perspective. The question is meant to invoke that and prepare us. There is a process that takes place, and it may take some time when we're asking such a question. And oftentimes people who go through adversity and then lose faith, there's a sense later on, they often find out that, oh, it was actually the most important event of my life. And if that hadn't have happened, then I wouldn't be here now. I mean, I write a lot about that in the book. And I mean, example I can give immediately, which is sort of a modern example, semi-modern. It's about Steve Jobs. He gave a commencement speech at Stanford, and he talked about the most important landmarks in his life, and they were all disastrous. He said that, and we all know he started the Apple company, and they had a modicum of success, right? Yeah, something, a little something, and at one point, after hiring a CEO to help rise to the next level, the CEO and the other board members conspired and kicked him out of his own company. How does that feel? Feels like your life's over, he said. Everything I worked for, everything I dreamed about, and it was finished, and in such a way that it was ignominious. There's a way that he felt betrayed and also embarrassed. But he said that led to him thinking, why did I do it in the first place? He thought, I just wanted to be creative. All I wanted was a machine that people could use and they could be a little more creative. He wanted to use fonts. There were no fonts before him. And he got it from Reed College from taking a calligraphy class. So he kept backing up and going back to, why did I do it in the first place? Have you ever had that happen? Some reversal of fortune, and then you actually get really deep. And you think, well, anyway, at least I'm still alive. That's philosophy, right? Like, it's just a car, and so on. And when these types of things happen, we come to our senses. Otherwise, Kunti said in another prayer, said, we get so taken with our success and with our beauty. Like, I look so great. And then when we lose something, then we feel like, why am I really here? What's the purpose of life? All these things come to the fore. So the question is not meant to crowbar somebody out of a trauma, but it is a lifestyle and a way of looking at the world that we can inculcate in ourselves and in others so that we can be prepared for the things that happen. And we can actually more readily take the lesson as it's happening by being prepared for it rather than wallowing for a long period of time and then being, after extensive time, being presented with the lesson that was available in that. So one can use these very practically, can try it on yourself to ask the question. And what you can do for others, which was the other part of your question, is just be nice. My parents weren't absolutely thrilled that I ran away from home and became a monk when I was a kid. But I was always they were nice to me and I was nice to them, and everything ended quite nicely. They're both gone. But if you're nice to people, they'll appreciate that there are not that many nice people in the world. And where are you getting it from? Be a kind friend to all living beings. Thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attention. I really appreciate it.
Let's give another thank you to Vaisesika Guru with a big another Haribol round.
Thank you very much.
So one announcement before our next part of the program. When you guys go out for the dinner, well, we have the books available right outside on the table, and some cool wristbands and some stickers and all that stuff. Pick one up, and we can even ask if it's okay if Vaisesika Guru could sign your book personally to you or a friend or a colleague.
I would, but I have no ink in my pen. So maybe next time. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll get you another pen. So let's all stand up and put our mats aside for the next part of the meditation.
Thank you so much.
Sorry about the interruption, Rich.
Like, operate that thing.
Should we do?
Like a 10-minute kirtan.
Okay. Can I play? Are you gonna
We usually just stand up.
and use instruments?
Yeah, and then just dance.
Okay. Should I just play my regular
Yeah,
instrument?
that would be. Oh, serious?
Okay.
So you're there before me. You really wouldn't know him?
Like what you said, you should get it and take it first. So it took to it. Like you did on your way. Now it took time, but it took.
So, Hare Krishna, everyone. So, has everybody done kirtan before?
That's your vibe.
Yes?
And
No?
you upgraded.
I
I went the other way. I
confused
was
about the mantra. The mantra here is right behind us. Everybody repeat after me. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama Rama. Hare Hare.